I cannot believe it myself. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well. For those who may have missed it just now coming in, my name is Ian Boatman. I'm a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Wilmington, North Carolina. Looks like we have a decent amount of variety in this talk. I know there's some people visiting us here from New Hanover County, North Carolina. We got some neighbors visiting with us from Horry County, South Carolina. Welcome aboard. Might even have some folks in Marion County. Didn't really get a close look at it, but I know we have a decent little variety of folks joining us. So hey, thank you for coming out. This is a basic Skywarn storm spotter talk. We have two different varieties of these. We have the basic version, and then later we have the advanced version. And you have joined us here for the basic version this evening. Thank you once again for coming out. We appreciate it. And might as well get the show on the road, folks. So we're going to talk about severe weather and flood safety, certain things to look out for, how you can help us out, because you play a big help in this entire process, and that's really significant for us. We're going to talk about thunderstorms and severe weather. We're going to talk about the kind of information that we provide at the National Weather Service and the kind of information that you can provide us. This is a give and go symbiotic relationship. We're able to help you guys out as much as we can, and I know that you guys can help us out in many different ways, and we'll talk about some of that. We'll also go over some myths and some weather safety information. Going to do our best impersonation of Adam and Jamie from Mythbusters from way back in the day. Going to bust some myths here and there later on this presentation. Man, I miss that show. It's a good piece of my childhood. The National Weather Service mission. If you Google this, you can find it out there. Officially, we provide weather, hydrologic, that's just a fancy word for water, weather, water, and climate forecasts and warnings for the United States, its territories, like Guam and Puerto Rico, and the adjacent waters and ocean areas for the protection of life and property, and of course, the enhancement of the national economy. In real estate, they have a phrase, location, 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 right? That's the big thing that the real estate folks are obsessed with. Our version of that, life and property, life and property, life and property. We're all in the business of saving lives and doing what we can to help protect property, serving you all, serving the wonderful area that we live in and work in. We're part of you. We live in the community, and we want to make sure that we can serve in the best way that we can. So that's a little bit about the mission and the business of what we do. Here's a little picture of our office. We're located at the Wilmington International Airport, and we serve 14 counties. We'll show off a little map of that here in a bit. Here's some pictures, a lot of the toys that we get to play with. We have satellite and radar. We have weather balloon data. We have buoys. We have weather stations on the ground, that tell us some really good stuff. We are under the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Noaa. That's the Noaa logo there in the top left corner. Your National Weather Service logo in the top right corner. Noaa is our parent organization, and they own a fleet of several aircraft. Probably the most famous ones are the Hurricane Hunters. There's actually two different types of Hurricane Hunters. You have the Noaa Hurricane Hunters, and then you have the Air Force Hurricane Hunters. But they both do similar kinds of missions, flying into the hurricanes, literally into the hurricanes, to gather really good information about temperature, pressure, and so on and so forth. All of that data gets ingested, and we get to play with that data in the office, and tells us really important things about what's going on at the surface and above our heads where the planes are. So really good info. This is our CWA, the County Warning Area, just the list of the number of counties that we cover. We cover 14 of these counties across Southeast North Carolina and Northeast South Carolina. A little bit of a tongue twister there. It's a little ironic because we're located in North Carolina, but we actually cover more counties in South Carolina. We cover 8 in South Carolina and 6 in North Carolina for a total of 14. Relatively small area in comparison to some other National Weather Service offices, but hey, we're here for you. We're open 24/7, 365, here to serve you. So that's a little bit of info about the area that we cover. Little picture of the office there. That's what it looks like on the inside, our main operations floor. This is where all the action happens. This is where the sausage is made, so to speak. We use these fancy computer workstations that allow us to view all of the toys, the satellite, radar, the weather forecast models, get to debate what's going on in the GFS model versus the European model, among many, many others. We issue the forecasts of the watches and all the warnings right there. So that fellow there with all the computers there, you ever want to know where a tornado warning comes from? It comes from right there in those computers. So when you get that notification on your phone, there's some average Joe out there in our office that's actually issuing that. We got the know-how, we got the technology, we got the education, but again, we're part of the community just like you. So that's a little picture of our office and a little bit of what we do. KLTX, this is our WSR 88D Doppler radar located in Charlotte, North Carolina in Brunswick County. Some National Weather Service offices have their radar located pretty much at the office, and some of them are located elsewhere within the area that we cover. In general, you want to make sure that your radar is located, about midway through the entire area, so that way you kind of get equal coverage of everybody that you look after. So that's why our radar is located in Charlotte. You probably have seen recently that the radar has been in the news. You might have caught that recently on the evening news a couple nights ago. The radar is being moved. I will let go that detail for right now. We'll get back into that towards the end of this presentation. We'll have a little Q&A session about it, among other things that we talk about here. But for now, the radar is located in Charlotte in Brunswick County, and that's some of the imagery that we're able to get. If you want to get nitty-gritty with your information, that image there on the left, you see that on TV a lot. That is radar reflectivity. That's kind of the first thing that shows up there. It tells you the intensity of rain or thunderstorms or what have you that's moving through. The image on the right there is radar velocity. That's another one you see on TV a fair amount of times. If you watch local weather or the Weather Channel or what have you, they'll show a good bit of velocity. And that's only two of many, many, many different products and really cool stuff that the radar shows us. The radar is a very powerful tool. However, as good as the radar is, as good as the satellites are, as good as our instrumentation is, we have a problem around these parts. That's a map of our area that we cover, and those light blue bullseyes there, if you will, represent the different weather stations that we have across the area. Well, then you see the green circles that show a lot of holes. We have a pretty sparse data network going on, and that's unfortunate. That's not really good for us. Well, the good news is that that's where you folks come in. All right, that's why you attend this webinar tonight, because you're going to be able to give us some help. You guys are able to turn into your own weather station, so to speak. It's important for us to have boots on the ground, if you will, to be able to tell us exactly what's going on out there. You guys keep an eye on the skies for us, because the radar is really good and the satellites are really good, but even they have their own limitations. So if you're able to overcome and help us out to perhaps move on for some of these limitations and give us some idea of what's really going on, that's a really, really, really big deal. And it means more than you might think. We have some friends out there in meteorology that help us out. The Storm Prediction Center, the SPC, located in Norman, Oklahoma. It's one of the big weather hubs in the United States. The SPC publishes severe weather outlooks every day, and they're just a general heads up for potential severe weather across the next 3 days. Gives you an idea of what to expect. You pay close attention to the forecast no matter what, because things can change literally from 1 hour to the next. Quite frankly, things can change from 30 minutes or less to the next 30-minute period. Want a little picture of what that weather outlook looks like? That's what we have on the left. This is from a actually really infamous severe weather outbreak that took place, 11 years ago. I was a junior in high school when this happened. April 27th, 2011. Multiple tornadoes took place in the deep south. Probably the most infamous one ripped through Tuscaloosa, Alabama, on the University of Alabama campus. Really horrific day that took place. over there. I remember it well. I remember watching James Spann, chief meteorologist at ABC 3340 in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm born and raised in Augusta, Georgia myself, so I remember pulling up the feed of James Spann covering the tornadoes that day. Dramatic day. But that's the map that was issued that day by the Storm Prediction Center. Give you a look at what's ahead, and they verify that map really well. That pink, that bullseye there, that is the highest risk. It's literally a high risk, a level of 5 out of 5 for severe weather. And if you look at the severe weather reports from that day, tornadoes, severe wind, and hail, they all have a bullseye right in that little pink area. So the Storm Prediction Center is fantastic at what they do. They're a big help for us, as is the National Hurricane Center and the Weather Prediction Center in Silver Spring, Maryland, and the Climate Prediction Center, the CPC, all of these sub-organizations within the National Weather Service. We all help each other out. So that's just a little piece of what the SPC does in Norman, Oklahoma. Well, we talk about what a severe thunderstorm is, and this is where you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what a watch versus a warning is. Severe thunderstorm is simply a thunderstorm that produces 1-inch hail. 1-inch hail is the size of a quarter, or winds of 58 miles per hour or greater, or shall I say, and/or winds of that strength. However, a thunderstorm is considered to be severe if you have one of those things or the other. You don't have to have both. If you have one of them, well, then you got yourself enough to issue a severe thunderstorm warning. Speaking of a warning and speaking of a watch, when you have a watch that's issued, whether it be a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch, it means that conditions are becoming favorable for adverse weather within the next several hours. You need to increase your situational awareness. However, a severe thunderstorm or a tornado is not guaranteed. Think about what you have in your kitchen. Maybe you want to bake a cake this evening. Well, maybe you have the ingredients to bake a cake, or maybe you don't. You take out the ingredients on your table, on your countertop, you got the flour, you got the sugar, you got the eggs. But if those ingredients just sit there on the table, well, no cake is going to happen, right? Basically, you would be under a cake watch, if you will. I know Brad Panovich, one of the broadcast meteorologists in Charlotte, North Carolina, I know he talks a lot about a cupcake watch versus a warning as a good way to explain it. So that's kind of a locally famous thing around here. Really good way to help explain the difference between a watch and a warning. If you get a warning, you throw all that flour and the sugar and the eggs and bake it in the oven and pull it out of the oven, and then you have a cake. That's a cake warning, right? Cake is imminent. Cake is a thing that's happening right this very moment. Same thing goes for severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning. The adverse weather is imminent. It's happening right this very moment, or it is already occurring. Remain safe, okay? Take shelter, please. Tornado warnings, usually about half an hour, maybe sometimes 45 minutes. Severe thunderstorm warnings, typically a little longer than that. They can go upwards of an hour. And that's a little bit about the differences between a watch and a warning. Remember the ingredients of a cake. You have the ingredients there, but may not necessarily mean a cake is happening. It's a really good way to remember the difference between a watch and a warning. When you're out there storm spotting, as you do for us, here's some differences that are some really good things to know. When you're out there looking at severe weather, you might have a funnel cloud, which is simply a violent rotating column of air that extends from the cloud base of a thunderstorm, but it is not yet in contact with the ground. It looks like a tornado, but it's technically not a tornado yet, okay? And it may not ever become a tornado. The funnel cloud may drop down a little bit, and then it just may go back up into the sky, and that'll be it. Well, in that case, that's just a regular old funnel cloud. But if that funnel cloud does hit the surface, well, suddenly you got yourself a tornado, my friend. So it's a similar kind of definition. It's a violently rotating column of air that extends from the base of the thunderstorm cloud all the way to the ground. And that is a bona fide tornado, and that's how that differs from a funnel cloud. Sometimes tornadoes get confused with a microburst, which is a localized column of air that sinks within the thunderstorm. that causes very localized damage in an area generally about 2.5 miles in diameter or less. This differs from tornadoes because tornadoes have a path that they go down, right? Maybe that path is, quarter mile, half a mile, or even more than a mile, right? You can have tornadoes that go on for tens of miles or even more than that. May not be a straight path necessarily, might be a little windy, a little curvy, but in general, tornadoes have a specific path to them. Whereas a microburst, as you see in that little GIF there, literally just looks like a ball of air that's falling out of the cloud. And well, quite frankly, that's kind of actually what it is. Just a ball of cold air that comes from the ground from way up in the thunderstorm cloud, hits the ground at a very high speed. You can have these things hit the ground at like 90 miles per hour or more and spreads out in all directions as soon as it hits the ground. Very localized kind of a thing. Whereas tornadoes, longer distances that they cover, and they're more narrow generally. So sometimes tornadoes and microbursts get confused. It's a really good thing to recognize the difference between those two. Thunderstorms. Well, if you grew up in the Southeast like I did, you know that we have a good bit of thunderstorms around here. Maybe not as much as Florida, which has more thunderstorm days per year than anybody else. They also the lightning capital of the United States. They have a bunch of lightning strikes over there. But of course, we have plentiful lightning strikes and thunderstorm days over here too. Generally in the Carolinas, in 365 days throughout the year, we have about 40 to 50 of those days that have thunderstorms in them. So hey, pretty decent, right? We're no stranger to thunderstorms around these parts. General climatology, when you can expect generally severe wind, severe hail, tornadoes, most of the time typically takes place in the summertime or the springtime, and typically in the afternoon or evening. However, thunderstorms, tornadoes, severe winds, severe hail, that stuff can occur any time of the day, any time of the year. A lot of you might remember something that hits a little closer to home. The Brunswick County tornado in February 2021. That was a nocturnal event. I actually worked that event. I was not the radar operator that night. I was taking care of phones and looking up social media for reports and doing that online kind of thing. And I actually kept in close contact with the emergency manager at Brunswick County throughout that night, and he was relaying reports to me live, which was very eerie. That's really kind of the most serious, biggest weather event that I have covered since my time here. I came here in December 2019. So, that just goes to show February, well, you're in the dead of winter, and that was a middle of the night event. Well, that doesn't really match up with what you see here in these graphs here. But that just goes to show severe weather can happen any time of day, any time of year, okay? So it's important to always kind of be prepared for this kind of thing, okay? If you watch the Weather Channel at all, you might hear them talk about an acronym called SLIM, something that I like to talk about too. I like how they explain it. SLIM, it's an acronym that stands for shear and lift and instability and moisture. This is basically your ingredients for severe weather, just like your ingredients for the cake, the flour and the sugar and all that stuff. These are the 4 ingredients that you need for a thunderstorm to occur, for a good severe thunderstorm. Sometimes you can have storms that kind of come together for, maybe you only need 3 of these ingredients for it to come together, but more than likely it's probably not going to be a severe one. Good severe thunderstorm gives you all 4 of those ingredients at once in pretty good quantities. And you can sort of track this stuff throughout the day as you watch the life cycle of a thunderstorm. You have the cumulus stage, just pretty white, puffy little cumulus clouds. I like to call these picnic clouds because it's a good picturesque day where you're probably out on a picnic. Cumulus stage, you have some weak updrafts in the cloud. That's how that forms. That's how the cumulus clouds form. Just a little bit of rising air. No precipitation. You still got plenty of sunshine. Not all cumulus clouds reach the next stage. Maybe you just have cumulus and that's it. Nothing else. So perfect, good picnic day. But maybe they grow. maybe they grow. And now they go from cumulus to towering cumulus. If you want to sound like a cool kid like me, like all of us weather nerds, instead of cumulus, you could say Q. And if it's say, instead of towering cumulus, you could just say towering Q, just CU. That's how some of the cool kids say it. So if you want to learn some of the lingo, join in with us. But sometimes you can see that towering Q stage. Those cumulus clouds, they get taller. They get a little more scary looking. Oh, let's keep an eye on that. Because now you have that air that's primarily moving upward. Those updrafts are getting stronger. Things are getting a little more wicked. Keep an eye on that. If the air mass is not unstable enough, then the downdrafts could occur with precipitation with showers. And maybe they just stay as showers. Just a little bit of rain, not a big deal, that's it. But sometimes it continues to grow to the biggest and most mature stage we have yet, literally called the mature stage. This is when you have updrafts and downdrafts going on, pretty violent in both directions. This is the stage that severe weather is most likely, especially if the updrafts are very strong. Think about a boiling pot of water on the stove, that water violently bubbling. Quite frankly, that's really kind of how the atmosphere works too. Things really get churned up, really heavy rainfall. Maybe you got some hail to go with it. Maybe you had some golf ball hail, a lot of lightning, maybe a tornado, right? A lot of activity going on in this mature stage. But eventually, even if it takes a while, it'll start to dissipate. And you'll go into the dissipating stage. The updrafts start to die out, and you now have more downdrafts than anything else, simply downward moving air, sinking air. And your risk for severe weather is starting to taper off pretty fast. Basically, the storm will start to rain itself out, if you will, and it'll leave behind debris clouds. So you might see some broken off cumulus clouds or cirrus clouds or what have you. If you have thunderstorms that go into the evening, if you wake up the next morning and look up at the sky, you'll actually see those leftover cirrus clouds from the thunderstorms that took place the night before. So that's kind of cool. You may not necessarily have realized that connection, but you may have seen some of the boneyard, if you will, from a thunderstorm that happened several hours beforehand. So that's a pretty unique, interesting thing. And we see that a lot around here, especially as we get in deeper into the spring and the summer. Excuse me, needed a drink of water there. That GIF is the real deal. That is not photoshopped. That is not fake. That is a real rotating supercell thunderstorm located out somewhere in the Great Plains or upper Midwest, where those big beasts can move out there in those big cornfields. They produce a lot of hazards, right? Thunderstorm dangers. We got some big things here to consider. We have hail. Some of you may have remembered recently, parts of South Carolina and North Carolina, we had baseball-sized hail about a week ago. Pretty significant. That's the biggest hail that I've seen since I moved here. We have lightning to be concerned about. We have tree damage and structural damage. We have flooding, tornadoes, lots of things to be worried about. So let's hop into some details here. Lightning, very easily the most common thunderstorm hazard. If you run into anything, you run into lightning. Well, let's think about this for a second. You're out there in the beach and you get a sunburn. We know how much a sunburn stings, especially if you get a real nasty one that blisters. Please wear your sunscreen, by the way. Well, if you consider how much a sunburn stings, well then consider that lightning is a lot hotter than the surface of the sun. It is over 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my goodness, hot. Maybe you don't want to touch that, right? Putting your hand on the stove hurts enough. You certainly do not want to get struck by lightning. Globally, there are 1.4 billion with a B lightning strikes per year, and 10% of those lightning strikes can occur away from the storm's rain shaft. Maybe at some point you have heard of a phrase called bolt in the blue, and that's basically what that is. You could have a thunderstorm that's 30 miles away, 50 miles away. You can't really see it. It's sunny sky, nice in your area where you live in, but suddenly you have a lightning strike that seemingly comes out of thin air. what we would call bolt in the blue, because those lightning strikes can sometimes occur away from the thunderstorm. And that's a little bit of a, excuse the pun, it's a little bit of a shock to the system, if you will. That was on accident, by the way. But something to be aware of. So keep an eye on the radar, because there might be a storm that's a little farther away than you may expect, but sometimes it can produce that bolt in the blue lightning effect. Lightning loves to have myths surrounding it. So let's put on our Mythbusters cap. Need to watch Discovery Channel again. And let's bust some common lightning myths. Myth number 1, lightning is attracted to metal. It's not necessarily true. The bigger thing is lightning is more likely to strike the tall objects, the trees, the power poles, the power lines, water towers, stuff like that. Well, simply get away from the tall objects. Don't get near that stuff, right? And if anything, you want to be as small as possible, if you will. This goes more into severe weather safety, which we'll get into here in a bit when it pertains to tornadoes and such. So get away from your tall objects. Get away from the trees and the power poles and things like that. Lightning only strikes under the rain and the hail. Yet again, another myth. We just talked about that, the bolt in the blue idea. Your lightning can strike literally dozens of miles away from the core of the thunderstorm. You are in danger if you hear the thunder, which is why we have our famous phrase in the National Weather Service: when thunder roars, go indoors. When thunder roars, go indoors. A simple phrase, but it tells the story, and it tells you, if I just hear just a little bit of rumble of thunder, let's head inside, folks, because you never know. You actually are close enough to be struck by lightning. And let's not test Mother Nature. When you hear that last rumble of thunder, give it 30 minutes before you're able to go back outside. It's a good little 30-minute rule. So keep your kids inside before they want to go back out towards the swimming pool again. Let me get a drink of water again real quick. All right, that's better. Myth number 3, the tires on a car protect you from the lightning. That is also incorrect. Your metal-topped car is safe from lightning, at least most of them are. But in fact, it is not the tires, it is actually the metal chassis is what keeps you safe. It's the frame of the car, believe it or not. The rubber tires that are located on the motorcycles, convertibles, and the bicycles will not keep you safe, okay? A car is kind of like being indoors for the sake of lightning, and it's the metal frame and the chassis is the part that keeps you safe. The rubber tire idea, that's not how that works. But also, let's be clear that a car can protect you from lightning, okay? Being in a car does not protect you from other things like flooding or tornadoes, okay? So let's be very clear about that. So a car is kind of a one-dimensional hiding spot, if you will. Let's be selective of the sheltering if we can. And we'll get into some of that here in a bit. And speaking of shelter, myth number 4, you are 100% safe in a house. Well, you're pretty doggone safe, but you're not completely safe necessarily. While a house or a full-wall building, a good structure like that is a safe place, you should probably get away from the electrical, plumbing, and the wiring. Don't be connected to your house. Unplug your stuff. Corded phone, well, let's see who uses a corded phone anymore. No offense if you do have one. Hey, cheers to that, because I can appreciate the vintage part of that idea. But most of us probably don't have corded phones, but you probably have phone chargers, laptop chargers. Are your devices connected? Are they charging? Probably a good idea to charge that stuff before the severe weather comes in. Because if your lightning strikes your house, then you probably just shorted out everything that's plugged in. Refrigerator, laptop, phone, whatever else. Taking a shower, that's actually a real thing. So there are small electrical charges within water that comes out of your sink, out of your shower head. It's called ions. They're not really that strong of a charge. They're just very slightly positive or slightly negative. But it doesn't matter. A charge is a charge, and that's all lightning needs in order to travel. So you technically could get struck by lightning inside while you're washing your hands or taking your shower. Obviously, very, very unlikely, but it's a non-zero chance. You can't necessarily rule that out. So some good myths that we just busted there, and I hope you got some good info out of that. Ooh, are these videos going to work? No, they will not. Okay, we'll save those for last. There's some good videos there. We have a good video of a lightning striking a vehicle here. And it shorted out the vehicle's car radio and some other detail. But good news is everybody that was inside that vehicle was safe. I'll save that for the end of the presentation, and we'll look at some of those. Lightning reports. This is where you folks come in. Send us your reports of all kinds. When it comes to lightning, report any structural losses, structural damage from lightning, anything on fire, lightning struck a tree, fell on a house, things like that. Report that stuff to us. Report any lightning related injuries or fatalities to us. The caveat, the asterisk to all this stuff being, please make sure that you are not endangering yourself or anybody else at the time that you're making this report, okay? Don't get close to any of these structures, okay? You don't know if that tree is kind of unstable as it's leaning against that house. It might fall here more in just a couple minutes. Don't put yourself in that danger. Don't put anybody else in that danger. You see power lines on the road. You do not know if those power lines are live or not. So don't test it. So only make sure that you report any kind of severe weather, lightning or otherwise, when it's safe to do so. Moving on to hail. Hail is easily the most costliest thunderstorm hazard that we have among all the thunderstorm stuff to worry about. It can really dent up your windshield, or it can shatter the windshield. It can dent up the hood of the car, shatter the windows, mess up the nose on a plane. Yeah, how about that picture there? Again, that's real. Mess up the siding of your house. Hail can get pretty big. You can have golf ball, baseball, softball, grapefruit. You can even have huge hail that's given there. The biggest hail that we've ever seen took place in Vivian, South Dakota, 12 years ago in July 2010, 8 inches in diameter. Think about that. You can hold that thing in both of your hands. 1 pound, 15 ounces big, circumference 18.62 inches. I mean, you know, that's kind of like a little watermelon you got going on in your hands. And Mother Nature did that. Now, of course, the good news is the grand majority of hailstones do not look like that. However, also goes to show the awesome power that Mother Nature is capable of. Therefore, it is yet another sign to not mess with Mother Nature, no matter what. Reporting hail. If you're able to, give us detail. Give us as much detail as you possibly can. When did that hail begin? And how long did it last? You know, is it 10 minutes, 20 minutes? What is the size of the hail? Penny size, quarter size, golf ball, baseball size. Where did this take place? Is it covering the ground? Sometimes you can have a lot of hail that falls, and sometimes it looks like snow on the ground, right? Even though it's not snow, and they're very different processes, but every now and again it will kind of look deceiving like that. So give us that detail when you report hail. One little note when it comes to describing the size, if you're able to, stay away from marbles. If you were a kid playing with marbles growing up, you might remember that marbles are different sizes. So when you say marble-sized hail, it's a little subjective, you know. Well, what kind of marbles are you playing with, so to speak? So if you're able to be more specific, a quarter will always be a quarter. A golf ball will always be a golf ball, right? So stick to that kind of thing. Marbles, it's a little more subjective, and we want to kind of stay away from that idea. Moving on to flooding. Lightning is the most common, hail is the costliest, but flooding is the #1 thunderstorm-related killer. Now, we probably think of flooding around these parts in terms of probably hurricanes more than anything else. But of course, you can have just run-of-the-mill thunderstorms that can provide flooding. Well, when you send those flooding reports over to us, give us some detail. How deep is the water? Is it just standing water, or is it flowing pretty good? Are the roads closed away? Are they washed out completely? Do you have any yards, homes, or businesses that are flooded? You know, can you see that? You know, that's very obvious, significant flooding that we have going on. Give us that detail. Only, remember, if it's safe for you and others to do so, all right? Do not endanger yourself or anybody else to make sure you get in an extra good report, all right? If you need to sacrifice detail in order to make sure that you're not endangering yourself or anybody, that's really ideal, okay? We want detail, but not at that kind of risk, okay? Please do not do that. So some of these pictures might look familiar because this is kind of more or less what we're used to in the past. Some of this is hurricane related. Litchfield Beach, South Carolina, and the Wilmington photos, I think those both are related to Florence from a few years ago. The near Kelly picture there, I think that is not hurricane related. I think that's just thunderstorm stuff. You can see the road got washed out there. Water got underneath the dirt and the clay and the soil underneath the road and washed it out. You had erosion that took place there. So flooding is absolutely something not to mess with. So please do not ever drive through flooded roads. Don't do it. We had a good phrase we talked about earlier, when thunder roars, go indoors. We have another really good phrase for this kind of idea. Turn around, don't drown. Simple. If you see flooding, do not test it. A lot of times those floodwaters are murky and dirty. You can't really tell how deep those floodwaters really are. Also, you know, dirty water, you don't want to get cut and then you have bacteria that seeps into that and then you have worries of infections later, right? This can get slippery really quick. Don't mess with it. Turn around, don't drown. Easy as that. Never go near the drainage ditches. Again, you have no idea what's in there. You don't know how deep it is. You don't know how dirty it is. Maybe you have some water moccasins in there too, right? You don't know what's in there. Could have gators. You know, can't necessarily rule that out. Flood dangers increase at night because, well, you can't see. So do not mess with flooding, especially do not mess with flooding at night or any time throughout the 24-hour day. So flooding is the deadliest. Please stay away from it. I imagine this video is not going to work either. Cannot play media. That's okay. I still have copies of that. We can look into that later. Going back to the microburst, we discussed that a little bit earlier because sometimes microbursts get confused with tornadoes. Microbursts, again, are strong winds that come directly out of the thunderstorm cloud and move directly downward. And once they hit the ground, they go out. This is actually, some of this relates to my master's thesis that I did in grad school. But yeah, microbursts, they look like that in that image there. And they're very high, severe winds, 90 miles per hour, 110 miles an hour. They can really get up there and they cause localized damage. It's a good GIF there of another microburst coming down to the surface. And this is some of the damage that we've seen locally around these parts. It's got a Maxton, North Carolina on the right there from March 2002. So microburst confirmed in that area that brought up to 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts and brought significant structural damage to some homes in that area. So I can see when you look at that damage there that it kind of looks like tornado damage, right? And that's what people often think, oh, we must have had a tornado. Well, maybe, but also could have been a microburst. And that's why we also survey the storms to see that difference between that stuff. And that's why we show you these pictures of what the microbursts look like. Because again, yeah, I could see how they get confused with a tornado. So we try to clear the air up about that as much as we can. Reporting the wind damage, similar kind of story to what we've talked about before with other parts of weather. Report any kind of wind damage to us. If you have a way that you were able to measure that, that's probably a little rare. Most people don't really have that ability. But if you have a weather station nearby, maybe you have one in your property that you're able to connect to your smartphone or something. If you're able to measure that wind gust, especially if it's 50 miles per hour or greater, that's when you're getting into the severe stuff. That's good info for us to know. Describe the damage. You have trees down, significant structural damage, you know, things blown around all over the place. Among those trees down, I mean, you know, are they actual trees that are down, or is it just kind of tree limbs, you know, kind of nuisance stuff that you can, you know, walk around and pick up on your own? Or, you know, we have significant concerns, you know, entire giant trunks on the ground. Let's get that detail if we can. And again, a wind speed, if you have an estimate, Most people probably don't. I wouldn't stress out about that. Tell us kind of the bigger overall story. But once again, only tell us the nitty-gritty detail as long as you are not endangering yourself or anybody else. Do not do that. A little bit of info about the tornado rating scale. A Japanese scientist 100 years ago named Dr. Ted Fujita. He was known as the father of tornadoes in meteorology. He's famous in our field. And he created a tornado rating system, and he named it after himself, the Fujita scale. And it was known as the F scale, and it rated from F0 to F5. And about 15, 20 years ago, we enhanced the scale and kind of recreated it based on some better science, and now we call it the enhanced Fujita scale, the EF scale. Similar kind of story, the EF scale ranges from 0 to 5. 0 is the weakest and 5 is the strongest. And this depends on the wind speed. And it also depends on the kind of damage that it produces. Some people don't know that we do not rate tornadoes as they are happening. So if we have a tornado warning, that's out right this moment, we can't look at the radar and say, oh yeah, that's an EF2 tornado. We don't do that. We go out on a storm survey, typically the next day or the next couple of days, and we go out and survey the damage. And it is a really in-depth process, more in-depth than I even imagined. And I've only been on 2 surveys, and those were not even tornado surveys. Those were just damaging wind surveys. So I haven't even seen a tornado one yet. But even in the wind damage survey, you would be amazed about how complicated that is. So the tornado ones sometimes are even a little more complicated. And as we do some research on that, we determine the final rating on what we want to give that tornado. And that comes out publicly. We have a public announcement about it, and that'll get picked up by local media, and you'll see that. But it's a delay because we have to go out and really put a magnifying glass on it, so to speak. This won't play either. Yeah, that's all right. We'll show it later. Another little piece that hits close to home. This was thankfully a weak EF0 tornado. No injuries or fatalities with this one. That's the best news. But this took place January of 2020. Loris High School in Loris, South Carolina, the inland portions of Horry County. And this was security camera footage that is on campus of this high school looking towards the student parking lot. And this weak tornado goes through and picks up a couple of cars and collapses them on top of each other. Nothing, dramatic as far as the carnage goes, which is the best news, but certainly this was something that hit a little closer to home around these parts. And it's quite a fascinating video that we caught here, and I'll be sure to show that at the end of this presentation. That's the third and final video that I have, and quite honestly, that's probably the best video that I have. And I'll show that in a bit. Reporting the tornadoes and the funnel clouds. Please confirm if the funnel is in contact with the ground if possible. Remember, the funnel cloud comes out of the main base of the thunderstorm cloud, but it has not hit the ground yet. And that's what makes it a funnel cloud. It is not a tornado officially, and it may never be. The funnel cloud just might go right back up, and that'll be it. So if you're able to, please discern the difference between funnel clouds and tornadoes. I know sometimes you may not be able to because sometimes the rain shaft gets in the way, makes things a little blurry, or you might have trees that are kind of blocking your way and it's not really, definite as to what you're seeing. And that's okay, that's understandable. Do what you can. Is the funnel small? Does it kind of look like a rope, or is it, kind of large? Some of the big monster tornadoes, sometimes they're called wedge tornadoes because they just look like a big wedge. So, kind of give that brief little description there. Has the tornado caused damage? Can you see debris that's kind of getting kicked up, or, have you been through a small town and you definitely see debris from a tornado that just went through? Once again, only do this when this is safe. Do not be a hero and try to capture a moment for us. Please don't do that. Once again, do not endanger yourself or anybody else. Only do this stuff when it's safe. A quick little pause for water. All right, much better. Take shelter, know where to go when a tornado strikes. Your best case scenario is a basement. Basement is the best, but I know probably in the Southeast, a lot of houses do not have basements. So from there, the lowest interior room of your house, downstairs bathroom, downstairs closet, that's the best kind of thing. And take stuff with you when you go to take shelter in the bathroom and the closet. Take a bike helmet. You got a football helmet laying around? Take a football helmet with you. Are you going to look kind of stupid? Yeah, but who cares, right? What you're trying to do is protect yourself and save a life, right? I mentioned James Spann earlier, famous chief meteorologist at ABC 3340 in Birmingham, Alabama. He loves to talk about the helmets, bike helmet, football helmet. And then he has people that tweet pictures of him wearing their helmets. And there's stories that come out inevitably that say, yeah, I wore the helmet and I looked kind of silly. But you know what? There was a big tree limb that went through near where I was protecting myself, and the helmet saved my life. Well, there you go. The proof is in the pudding right there. Rip off the couch cushions off the couch. Take the pillows off your bed. Take that with you. Soft, protect yourself, protect your family, protect everybody that's with you, right? That's the main idea here. Get away from the top floors. They do not protect you. The exterior rooms do not protect you, right? Those are the extremities of the house, if you will. No place outside is safe from a tornado. Seek shelter. Interior room, bathroom or a closet. Stay away from windows, stay away from glass. I know the bathroom thing, that doesn't necessarily work because you probably have a bathroom mirror. Well, you get what you get in the circumstances, which is why it's a really good thing to make sure you have helmets and couch cushions and things like that. Quite frankly, think about other things too, like wearing closed-toed shoes. I know as we get into the warm weather, everybody's wearing flip-flops, myself included. I get it. But if you're expecting severe weather and you're, kind of around at home, put on shoes, because then you won't have to worry about stepping in debris later, broken glass, stuff like that. There's an argument to be had for wearing long pants, throw on a pair of jeans, stuff like that. I know nobody really wants to put on a pair of jeans in the summer when it's really hot outside, but there's other little things you can do that's kind of underrated stuff when it comes to protecting yourself in severe weather. So some more detail about the tornado shelters. Your worst options, the mobile homes and the vehicles. Remember, cars are kind of good for protecting you for lightning, but that's about it. Don't go to a car to protect yourself from a tornado. No, bad idea. This one is kind of another myth to bust, the highway overpass thing. Some people think that hiding under a highway underpass or overpass is a good idea. That's actually one of the worst things you can do because it creates a wind tunnel and not good. So please do not use a highway overpass. That's one of the worst things you can do. Air for something a little bit better. Interior room, well-constructed building, basement. You can look into getting a safe room with FEMA. FEMA has instructions on like designing a FEMA approved safe room. If you have the resources and the capability, I know that's kind of extreme. Again, stick to the basic ideas. Remember, interior rooms, basements, bathrooms, closets on the downstairs floor, that will work. And that's proof right there. Here are 2-story homes. You see the second story is not looking too good. The first floor looking pretty good. I mean, relatively speaking, right? Things are pretty wiped out, but those interior rooms, they're solid enough to work, right? Once again, there's your proof in the pudding right there. So this stuff works, and keep that in mind. After the storm, well, let's make sure, is that the last storm? Maybe throughout severe weather that day, you have 2 or 3 rounds of severe weather to be concerned about. So check in with the forecast to make sure that the threat is actually over. Contact your loved ones. Give them a text. Shout them out on Facebook Messenger. Give them a phone call. Get in contact with those folks. Listen to local officials, right? these are your boots on the ground folks, law enforcement, emergency managers. They'll tell you certain roads that are closed, or certain things that are okay or not okay, what have you. Check us out, National Weather Service, Wilmington, North Carolina. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're available on all 3 of those platforms, and we provide updates throughout severe weather outbreaks, winter storms, hurricanes, you name it. We're always there. Make sure you have flashlights with fresh batteries. Don't use candles, because you might have a risk of starting a fire, and perhaps there's already a fire going on that you might not know about yet. Electrical wiring, things like that. And if you tip over a candle, make it worse. So stick with flashlights, right? Watch out for debris or down power lines. Don't want to give yourself bad splinters, broken glass in the feet. Down power lines, you don't know if that power line is actually dead. The electricity still could be live in it, so don't even test it. Just stay away from it. So keep that in mind after the storm. So summary of what to report. You see a tornado, you see a funnel cloud, send that our way. Water spouts, yep, send it our way. Give us reports of hail. When did it take place? Where are you located? What's the size, right? Golf ball, baseball, quarter, penny. Stay away from marble. Remember, marble size, that's subjective. Stay away from that. Wind damage. Describe the damage. You got a couple tree limbs here and there. We have significant trees down, significant structural damage, houses wiped out. Be specific with that stuff. Talk about significant flooding, cars being wiped away, houses, businesses being flooded out completely. Give us that detail. Snowfall and rainfall reports are also very helpful. If you're able to, stick a ruler in the snow to give us a report about that, tweet it at us. That's great, really helpful, a lot more helpful than you might even think. But once again, said it a billion times, I'll say it again, do not do this if you are risking yourself or other people. Only submit your reports when it is safe to do so. I cannot stress that enough. If you take anything away from this lesson tonight, let that be the biggest point that you take away. So we need to know who you are, what you've seen, where stuff is occurring, and when this all happened. Who, what, when, where, and how, if you will. Ask those questions before you submit your report, so you have something specific to give us, and you are pretty much golden, my friends. So that's all I got. Want to call this stuff in. We have a storm spotter line. Call this number toll free, no extra charge on your phone bill. 1-800-697-3901. I'll give folks just a second if they want to pull up their phones and take a picture of that. I know some folks want to do that. I'm going to take another swig of water while I'm waiting on that. All right. Well, that's it for this presentation. I greatly appreciate everybody's time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. Nope, I'm resharing my screen again. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna put the camera on me for a bit. I kind of hate this platform because it just shows the presentation. You don't get to see me. I'm a big believer of having context and putting faces to the names, and having facial expressions, right? That really kind of goes a long way in showing stuff. When I got this job, as I was applying to the National Weather Service out of grad school, every interview I ever had was a phone interview. Was not a fan of the phone interviews. Voice inflections kind of helps, but the video stuff, that's good to give you a face-to-face connection. So I'm opening up to a Q&A session. Feel free to ask any questions you'd like here for you. In the meantime, I'm going to pull up videos that I had in the presentation so we can watch some videos here. So I'm going to be doing that. You can use the question feature in the control panel of GoToWebinar to start asking your questions. And I will get to that here in a bit while I pull up the stuff that I need for the videos. So give me just a bit. I'll choke down some water while I'm at it. Kept me talking. Going there for about an hour. Yeah, Make your throat a little dry after a bit. Okay. Oh, sorry, a little loud there. It's pulling up a flooding video. All right. Flip back here, see if we got some questions in here. Yes, we do. Okay. Excellent. James, I see your question there. I'll get back to you in just a second. All right. All right. Now let's go back to James. First of all, cheers, James. Hope you're doing well, my friend. All right, James, any recommendation on home weather stations that are relatively inexpensive, say less than $350, and they can be connected to the internet? I'm not necessarily the best person to ask about that. I do not have my own personal weather station, and I really don't know the best ones that are out there. But I do have a couple of recommendations that could get you on the right path for that. There are a few ways that you can help us with data collection. You could go through CocoRahs. It's a big acronym. C-O-C-O-R-A-H-S, CocoRahs. It's an acronym that stands for the Collaborative Community of Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. And these are weather stations that take precipitation reports only. So you don't get temperature, any of that, but you get precipitation. And if you go to the CocoRahs website, cocorahs.org, CocorahS.org, it'll tell you a little bit about the program. This is something that the National Weather Service does not own the CocoRahs network. We are affiliated with it. We're kind of a sponsor of it, but we're a sponsor with it in addition to a bunch of other folks across the private sector and academic institutions and such. Yep, there you go, Lloyd. Lloyd with the assist in there. There's the link there in the questions section, cocorahs.org. CocoRahs has a lot of really good resources. They kind of tell you instructions on how to set up a weather station, and they'll give you recommendations on weather stations that you can use for that. So that's an example, and they're not $350. I can tell you that. I know there are the fancy ones that are $350, even probably $500, but you know, CocoRahs, they're going to give you the recommendations for the cheaper stuff. Another thing that we have available, this is something that we do own, that we being the National Weather Service, and I'm actually involved with this in our office. We have the National Weather Service. Why does the name of it escape me just now? Come on, like I helped run this program with a fellow forecaster. The Cooperative Observing Network. There we go. Come on. Where's the brain? Cooperative Observer Network. We call that just COOP for short, C-O-O-P, COOP. This is a weather station network that we own, and we have 18 active weather stations across our area. So how that works is we come to your house, your place of business, and we scope out your property. And there are some certain thresholds that your property has to meet. It has to be a certain amount of area. There can't be too many trees blocking the way, etc. And we basically grade your property if your property is able to have a weather station. If it is approved, then we come out and we install a weather station for you using our equipment, all federal government owned equipment that's owned by our organization. And we turn the key over to you basically and say, okay, report the weather for us. And you report every morning, observations by 7 a.m. And you give us the previous day's high temperature, low temperature, the current temperature, and then you give the precipitation amounts. So that is a volunteer service. It's a free thing. We provide the equipment for you. We provide all the kind of the infrastructure for it. You just provide that data for us. You can input that data on a website. You can call the numbers in, however you want to do it. But that is a free way to participate and get data for us. And as the one that's kind of the co-person in charge, me and another forecaster that do this program, yeah, let me get at my fishing reel and really start to kind of really want in on this. We need cooperative observer reporters. It does take dedication, right off the bat, because we do want these folks to be dedicated to report this stuff every day, 7 a.m. So it is a commitment, but we desperately need that. The National Weather Service in general has lost out a lot in probably the last decade of cooperative observers, and we need more of them. So if you are interested in becoming a cooperative observer, please let us know. And it's free for you. That's a big deal. And honestly, that's one of the best ways you can help us. So that's really one of the best ways to do it. So excellent question, James. And I hope that kind of points you in the right direction. And once again, shout out to Lloyd for the assist there, cocoros.org. William, well, you and I talked earlier, your name was Bill, I think, so excuse me, Bill. Bill says, hi, do we get a completion certificate? Yes, you do. After this webinar is over, you will get an email from our warning coordination meteorologist, WCM, Steve Paff. He's a wonderful individual. He'll send you an email probably tomorrow with your certificate, and that's when you'll get it. And that'll be available to you here pretty soon. That's all the questions I have here for right now. I'll let a couple folks think of extra questions. Meanwhile, while you're thinking, I'm going to turn off my camera here and switch back to my screen. So that way you folks can watch the videos that were supposed to be in this presentation. So let me flip the screen back. All right, here we go. So this was the Loris, South Carolina tornado that took place in January of 2020. Once again, this is at Loris High School, and this is security camera footage on the school property facing the student parking lot. So you see some showers coming in right now. Yeah, it looks pretty tame. The little trees out there on the property, a little breezy. Again, nothing scary, not a big deal. We'll skip ahead in this a little bit. Okay, rain may be getting a little heavier here, but still nothing really looks intimidating. Is it still showing? Come on. Well, come on, internet, don't for me. All right, I'm gonna just leave it there. Now the tree's starting to turn a little bit more, getting a little more breezy and windy. And it's, come on, don't pause on me. There we go. Here we go. Now it's getting a little scary. Now watch the cars in the parking lot. There you go. There's one that gets lifted. There's another one right there. And there's another one that gets crawled on top of another car. EF0 tornado. So it was a weak one, thankfully. Once again, no injuries, no fatalities. That's the best news of the day. But doesn't matter if you're a car, it was strong enough to lift that car on top of another. And you have other cars on the left side of the screen that got lifted up. We'll try to replay that little loop. Watch the very left side there. Boom, there's one, there's another. And there's that one that gets on top of the other. Yeah, so there's something that's a little closer to home, a little bit of an intimidation factor there. This is the lightning video, if I'm not mistaken, of a lightning striking a vehicle. Yeah, here we go. Yikes. Once again, do not mess with Mother Nature. She is a freaky beast, all right? That goes to show the awesome power. That's loud. Let's turn that down. Well, we'll turn it off. You don't need the sound anyway. This is hurricane footage from, oh man, I'm terrible with hurricane names. I can't remember, to be very honest with you. But this is hurricane damage from this area. And watch this truck go into the floodwaters. And that little sedan there in front of it. Make this bigger. That sedan getting carried away. He got lucky. That person got lucky. I hope they bought a lottery ticket that evening because that is very, very lucky. But do not ever think for a second that just because that person got away with it, that you will too. Please do not have that mentality. Once again, when thunder roars, go indoors. And when it comes to flooding, turn around, do not drown. So please do not mess with flooding or any type of severe weather.